Nevertheless, clearly, those two situations differ. In the first case, it is enough for me to deprive myself of a good in order to prove immediately its optional character, and this way demonstrate my own autarky. The sacrifice is accomplished perfectly by itself, that is, by myself. In this second case, it is not so. Admittedly, I manage to deprive myself of a good, but this renunciation cannot yet as such make anyone else take possession of what I have nevertheless already deprived myself of. The sacrifice remains unachieved, unfinished. My renunciation only displays the good, which, though put in position, still remains at a point of the process in which it is not yet given. The sacrifice in that case, in the horizon of the other, can be given up by myself without being actually given, in the sense of being appropriated by any possible other. In that case, even if I divest myself of a good, whether or not the other takes possession of it is not up to me. That depends only on the other. What is lost is not, just because that lost, what is lost is not, because just it is a loss, already found. I cannot say lost and found. It is lost and not yet found as a property by any other. So, by my decision alone, the sacrifice can only be accomplished halfway. Each achievement is not within the reach of my depossession, but awaits the agreement by the other. Thus depends on another decision, on an other deciding it, coming from elsewhere. I cannot best act as if my dispossession were equivalent to taking possession by the other, but I can neither assume that nor assume it. Dispossession can only anticipate reception, not achieve it, because acceptance by the other can only come from the other, and thus escape me by definition. Sacrifice involves my dispossession, but my dispossession is not enough to achieve sacrifice, which acceptance by the other alone can ratify. Assuming that giving up is enough to begin the sacrifice, the accomplishment as a gift comes down to its acceptance by the other. The gap has nothing optional or secondary about it, but marks the unyielding distance from me to the other, so that neither I nor the other can do away with it. It is part of the definition of sacrifice that even when offered, or rather precisely because offered, it can nevertheless be refused, mistaken, despised on the part of the other, and this constitutes precisely the part the other has to play. In this way, were it defined within the horizon of the other, the destruction or the disappropriation of the good would not be enough to give a full account of the possibility of sacrifice. So we have only deepened the aporia. Yet, it happens that the most usual explanation of sacrifice, produced and assumed by sociology, and mostly by sociology of religion, presupposes exactly the opposite, that my depossession of a good be enough for the effective accomplishment of sacrifice. Sacrifice would consist in making sure that the giving up of a good, by destruction or by devolution, no matter, for the profit of another, divine or mortal, no matter, is such that he accepts it and consequently gives a counter gift back to the one who initiated the sacrifice, with this reciprocal constituting the decisive presupposition. Obviously, the efficacy of sacrifice carried out by its initiator does not imply, nor guarantees absolutely, the acceptance of the good passed on, and nevertheless the reciprocity of the counter-gift. Nevertheless, this interpretation of sacrifice imposes itself, prevails, and still remains. How has it come to this? By presupposing what it cannot demonstrate, namely the acceptance and that the acceptance and the counter-gift always, or at least in the majority of cases, as the normal regular situation, follow from dispossession, no matter whether with or without destruction. But once again, how does it legitimate this presupposition? By implicitly referring every explanation of sacrifice to the model of exchange. I have no time here, it could be a bit boring, to give a precise reading of the arguments of Hubert and Marcel Mauss in the essay sur la nature et la fonction du sacrifice. This would document quite clearly what I say now. In the majority of cases, we find the three terms of the gift, of the exchange, and of sacrifice made equivalent, even indifferently substitute one for another. Just as if the gift consists in giving up a good in order to obligate the other to give the counter-gift back, do ou des, so exchange implies that every good that passes from one to the other is compensated by a good or a sum of money passing from the other to the one. So also the sacrifice give up a good by dispossession, destruction, or whatever, in order that the allegedly superior other, divine or mortal, accept it, accepting it, enter into a contract, and by contract return a good, real or symbolic. In the three cases, under the indistinct names of gift, it is a matter of exchange and sacrifice in the same economy of the contract. I bind myself to you in untying myself from a good, therefore you bind yourself back to me by accepting that good, therefore you owe me an equivalent good in return. From then on, sacrifice no more destroys than the gift gives up, since both of them work to establish the same exchange. Or rather, when sacrifice destroys and when the gift gives up, they work exactly the same way to establish and to strengthen the economy of reciprocity. We must conclude that destruction of dispossession, or even the horizon of the other, still do not allow us to determine a rigorous concept of sacrifice, except to confuse it with exchange in the same precision that moreover obscures the gift in similar confusion. In this context, one would call sacrifice at best the imprudence of an unwise exchange still unaccomplished, where a gift given up still does not know if any acceptance is going to ratify it. At worst, the illusion of a contract that no one would ever have signed with the one to whom the sacrifice is made. Unless it is a matter of plain lie told to the other or to oneself, that is, claiming to renounce without condition, hoping all the while, secretly or unconsciously, to receive an hundredfold what one loses only once. It would be better instead to consider the very term of sacrifice as inappropriate, an empty or contradictory concept, and to understand by sacrifice the contradiction that Derrida stigmatized in The Gift, quote, "The truth of the gift is enough to annul the gift. The truth of the gift is equivalent to the non-gift or to the non-truth of the gift," end of quote. We will thus say that the truth of sacrifice ends up in exchange, that is to say, is a non-truth of sacrifice, because it ought to consist precisely in giving up without return. So it would also amount to the truth of the non-gift par excellence, that is to say, to the confirmation that wherever one believes he speaks of sacrifice and makes it, in fact, he always hopes for an exchange, and for an exchange earning all the more as far as he claimed to have lost everything. I think that now we reach the core of the misunderstanding of the sacrifice, which is the same as the core of the misunderstanding of the gift. Nevertheless, a way could be opened through this very aporia, and thanks to it. More precisely, the extension of the aporia of the gift to sacrifice might already indicate another path, by making us think sacrifice precisely in its relation to the gift. We could then be able to think it no longer only as a dispossession or even destruction of a good in the horizon of the other, but also as a moment of a more comprehensive phenomenon of the gift. For the phenomenon of the gift manifests right away much more than an exchange. As we have attempted to describe elsewhere, the gift can, and thus must, be freed from exchange by letting its nature meaning his natural meaning be reduced to plain givenness. For while the economy of the exchange makes the economy of the gift, when reduced to givenness, inversely accepts itself from the economy by freeing itself from the rule of the exchange. The gift, in effect, proves still be able of being accomplished even and above all by reducing each of the three terms of the exchange. Without a giver, or indeed without a givee, being emancipated therefore from equality. As we use to the givenness of it, the gift is achieved then in an unconditioned immanence, which not only owes nothing to a change, but abolishes its condition of possibility. The reduced gift is performed by itself with an unconditional freedom. It never lacks anything which would prohibit it from self-giving, since, even without putting the work to terms of exchange, it still achieves itself and even better. But if the gift prove unconditioned in this way, we did not offer its most appropriate place to sacrifice, since this latter claims precisely to give and to give up without condition. In this hypothesis, the answer to the aporia of sacrifice would come from the very same answer found in the aporia of the gift, from the reduction of the gift to givenness. It will therefore be necessary for us to proceed to a reduction of sacrifice to givenness in order to articulate at one of its moments the phenomenon of the reduced gift. When then does the most evident aporia arise from? When the phenomenon of gift opens up. Precisely when and where the gift given appears. For when the giver, a thing, a being, a piece of... when the giver gives, it may be a thing, a being, a piece of information, a present, anything. When the giver gives, what comes into full light, the gift itself, starts, and this cannot be avoided, the gift, the process of giving starts to become blurred and then to disappear. In effect, the given gift, which gets its consistency, its realitas, and so to speak, its thickness from the thing given, takes up the front of the phenomenal stage, so to speak, so as to conceal or even exclude everything else from that stage. Everything else, that is to say, first, the giver.